So I've gone ahead and disassembled the fuel pump all the way. Got the lower kind of lever arm body, the top, and the little spring pocket there. Here's the rebuild kit. Comes with a new diaphragm, new screen, which is good because the original screen for the sediment pole was missing. New sediment pole gasket, a new gasket for the lower spring chamber there, and a mounting gasket. And I got all this. This was $20 from this place here, Mark's Parts, and they even give you this little manual for rebuilding the pump, which is nice. I actually bought two of these kits, one to keep in stock. So everything cleaned up pretty well so far. The only issue that I have is this area where the sediment bowl, or the top of the sediment bowl, there's some of this kind of white rust or corrosion, you might call it. And it's on the top of this area here, and then it's in the inlet fitting. Let me turn the light on the camera. Focus on that, yeah. You can see it up in that area there. This is the fuel inlet to the sediment bowl chamber. It has this kind of weird stuff growing on it. Just the corrosion that gets on this zinc die cast stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and bead blast just that area. I don't want to bead blast the whole thing because I think it'll ruin the look of it. I'm trying to keep this thing looking all original, like it hasn't been disassembled. So let me come back after I've cleaned that up and we'll go ahead and put this thing together. Okay, well, I'm in the process of reassembling this fuel pump here. Everything's been cleaned. I think I mentioned that already. So here's the new diaphragm. Looks nice. And the washers and everything, and the pull rod, as they call it. All the lever stuff has been installed. I have to tighten this nut right here to hold the diaphragm in place. Now the manual gives specific instructions on doing this. So I'm going to clamp it in the vise lightly here. That in shot? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the specific instructions pertain to tightening this nut. Now you see there's like a hexagonal washer right here. Now that washer's not attached to anything. It's just that. It's just a little washer. But the manual states that you need to line the diaphragm up. We'll snug that little 7/16 nut by hand here. The manual wants you to hold that hexagonal washer while you tighten this nut, so as to, I guess, prevent any rotational force that's imparted on this large, like, cup washer from distorting the diaphragm. So we're going to try to do that. That hex washer is about 3/4. I had to modify this wrench slightly to fit in this recess. So we'll hold that. See what I'm doing here? Turn this light on. There we go. I'm going to hold that. Keep an eye on the holes for the diaphragm and tighten this 7/16 nut in the center here. So the diaphragm can wiggle back and forth just because of the slop in that pin down at the bottom. So there's a little bit of play. It needs to be to the extreme in one direction for all the holes to line up. I think I'll slack it back off a little bit. Let's try that again. There we go. Alright, I think that's good. I don't think we need to make this thing killer tight. Okay. I should mention that this surface here I inspected just to make sure that there wasn't any pitting or gashes or anything. And I held the top and the bottom halves together to make sure that they weren't warped or anything. So now that that's done, I think should we just move the camera over? Well, let's continue on with the reassembly. So the manual calls out to put on the spring retainer, or the lower cover here, next. Before I do that, I have to, well, this fuel pump has a priming lever, so that just kind of snaps onto the snaps around the pull rod for the diaphragm. Just kind of spread that a little bit. It sits right on there, right in those grooves, and you see the two little fingers push down on the lever. So that's that. This may be a little bit difficult. Put the new diaphragm, or not the diaphragm, the gasket on. Yeah, this is going to be a bit difficult. How am I going to do this? I'm going to hold it like that. Set the two springs. Got one for the diaphragm here, one for the lever. The manual says that on some fuel pumps these might be different springs. They appear to be the same on this one. Gonna hold that. Just try to feed them up and get the little cups of those springs landed on the bottom of the diaphragm pull rod and the little bump on the lever arm. Okay, feels like I got it. Might be able to take a peek through here. Yep, you can see that we got the spring on the little bump of that lever arm there. That looks good. So does the diaphragm spring. A little tricky to do here. Get one of these screws started. Come on. There we go. This one does not want to start. There it goes. Seems to work. So does that. Okay. I didn't crank down on those terribly tight. Everything looks good there. Alright, the next step, they want us to reinstall the check valves, but the check valves for the input and output, we're going to forego that for right now and concentrate on putting the top housing back on, which I seem to have lost. Where could that be? Oh, it's right here. So the manual again gives specific instructions on installing this the top body of the fuel pump. So what they want you to do is actuate the lever arm to bring the diaphragm level with the bottom flange here, which is going to be easier said than done. There's quite a bit of spring tension there. Hold that level while you install the top cover and install finger tight these screws. So I'm going to do that now. Now, good thing is all our holes still line up. We got the alignment of the diaphragm pretty good there. Okay. Let me do this without making a fool of myself here. Now, from what I understand, they want you to do this just so that you don't stretch the diaphragm or pull it in a way that puts excessive tension on it. Like I said, there's quite a bit of spring tension there. Still looks like we're good. Still, you can see the diaphragm move there when I move the lever. So then they want you to run these down until they just touch the lock washers. Probably should be doing this in a crisscross motion, quick crisscross pattern. Okay. Then they want you to actuate the rocker arm. I call this the rocker arm. Releasing with a snap. This will ensure that the diaphragm will not be stretched too tightly. So, releasing it with a snap. Support the fuel pump and fully actuate the pump by hand while tightening the cover screws. Okay, so while we actuate the fuel pump, tighten the screws alternately. Okay. Go one more time around. All right, they're definitely secure. Let's go ahead and install the check valves. So in cleaning these, I went and I polished the seats here, brass seats with some Scotch-Brite. Little check valve discs are like a little phenolic. I can see the little ring where they had been riding on the brass seats for, well, since 1945. So I'm going to flip them upside down and use the side that was up against the spring down on the seats. Make sure I get it the right way around. There we go. Put the spring down. That centered in the hole there. Put the nut on. Do the same thing with the output check valve. Sounds like it's pumping air. Oh, I can feel it too. That's working very well. Okay. Oh, by the way, see how nice that cleaned up with the bee blaster? All that corrosion's gone. That just leaves the screen. New cork seal. I gotta say that the quality of these parts, of the parts of the kit, is really nice. That screen fits perfectly around the nub in the center, and the gasket fits well. Got the fuel bowl here. Nothing like a freshly rebuilt fuel pump. Okay. Let's go put that on the engine. So here's where we're at. Fuel pump is back on. The base is bolted on. It's full of oil. And I've bolted the whole thing down to this these wooden boards here, just to give it a platform to run on. I've removed the top of the float bowl of the carburetor, and I have a little bit of gum cutter sitting in there. There's a little bit of varnish at the bottom. Here's the top of the bowl and the float. It's fairly clean. I don't think I'm going to have to really go into this carburetor other than maybe just wiping the bowl out, blowing a little bit of carb cleaner through this jet. So, but while that's soaking, I want to turn my attention to the generator end. So, pulled the cover of the end bell off. You can see we might have had a little bit of mice in here at some point. And I want to take the end bell off, remove the brushes, so I can clean the slip rings and the commutator bars. Commutators down in there. It's kind of hard to get your hand in here. It's kind of not very good access. So I'm going to leave the camera rolling. Let's take that end bell off. Shouldn't be too much of a job. You know what? I should mention first what I'm going to have to do. So, I said access is difficult, and it is. I've got to get a couple of wires off of this stud or post up here, and there's no way for me to get to that nut easily without rotating the whole brush rig. But that's not such a big deal because under this dirt here, we're looking right at it, there's an arrow. See that arrow? And that's pointing right to a hash mark and a yellow paint mark right on the end bell frame. So that's going to allow us to get the brush rig realigned when we reassemble it. So I'm going to move that brush rig out of the way just to allow me to access those two studs. There's one at the bottom and one at the top. So if I loosen these bolts here, that should allow me to, rotate that whole assembly. Just throw a rag down here. I painted these boards, and I probably shouldn't have been in such a rush to mount the generator to them. Let me disconnect these small leads here first. Try to keep all these washers in one place, or in their original place. The brushes look like they're in pretty good shape. The slip rings and the commutator don't look damaged either, but I just want to be able to clean them. There's kind of like an oily residue on them. So that should be it for the sides here. Just gotta swing this whole rig out of the way. Should be 3/8 for this stud up top here. Sorry about that. We had a visitor. Had to attend to that. Everything looks to be in pretty good shape back here. Set those over here. Okay, so that should be everything wire-wise between the end bell and the controls / the stator. So I believe that I should be able to pop these nuts off here. I'm tighter than I thought. Yeah, they're pretty tight. Of course, I am using just a 1/4-inch ratchet, so that could be giving me a false sense of how tight they are. Right. So, this should just want to come right off of here. Too much stuff in the way here. There it goes. Oh, you know what? Let me lift these brushes before I break them. Why didn't somebody remind me that? Why didn't somebody remind me of that? That one's not going to be broken. That one's going to be okay. This one needs to be lifted. And these 4 should be lifted as well. But I'm going to slide it back anyway. One, 2, 3, 4. Let me pull on this one here. It should want to come right off. Let's try that again. There we go. Oh, look. Somebody said it's okay. See that? It says right there. Okay. Ooh, look at that bearing. I could use a little bit of fresh grease, I think, huh? Sounds a little dry. But yeah, look at that. Slip rings and the commutator bars look fine. Go ahead and buff those up. Make sure there's nothing stuck between the grooves of the commutator bars. And clean all this stuff out. We've got a mud dauber nest here. Get that out of there. Everything look okay up here? Yep. All right, let me get back to cleaning. The generator end is about ready to go back together. Slip rings, commutator bars are cleaned. Everything looks nice there. So I wanted to show you the brush rig here. All the brushes are almost like new, but I've said before about removing these filter capacitors on an old generator before you run it. And here's one that actually blew already. You see that? Blew the lead right out of it. So you got one here. This is the AC filter cap, and you got one here. So the reason I call it an AC filter is it's on one of the output brushes, the AC output brushes. Then you've got this one here. This is 0.5 microfarad at 200 volt DC. This is a DC filter cap, and this lead runs over to this stud, which is, I would imagine it's the positive side of the field here on the DC brushes. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this one and the other one. And if I was going to use this generator for something important, I was going to back my house up with it or something, I'd put new capacitors on there just for filtering. But for display purposes, for running some light bulbs and running the load bank, it's not going to hurt anything without those capacitors. The thing is going to work perfectly. So I'm going to pull those out and put this back together, and we're getting pretty close to starting it up. So quite a bit of time has gone by. I ran into some trouble. I couldn't get any ignition spark. Turns out the little switch here that selects between hand crank and electric start was not making good contact in the electric start position, so it was getting no DC power to the ignition circuit. That's corrected now. Just a little bit of contact cleaner and working the switch back and forth. Let's check for spark again. This thing does have does throw some lightning bolts. Let me turn this light off. Where's the button at? Okay, good spark. We got oil pressure. Looks like it. 20 pounds of oil pressure at cranking speed. That's not bad. Well, let me keep the camera rolling. I'm going to put these spark plugs in, and we'll put the fuel line into some gasoline, see if we can get a start out of it. That as high up as you'll go? Pretty much. Move you over here. Got my neighbor pressure washing next door, so that's that noise in the background. I cleaned these spark plugs pretty well and gapped them to 30 thousandths as per the manual. Got new seals for them, new gaskets. I'm not going to bother putting the shields on for now. Yeah, they've been pressure washing over there all day. I don't know what in the heck they're cleaning. I know they have an in-ground pool back there, but I guess you got to clean those every year. Put some fresh oil in the oil bath air filter as well. So it should be pretty much ready to go. Oh, you know what? I gotta hook the electric choke back up. I've had to take this control box apart to access the lower part of that switch. So that meant kind of disconnecting all the wires that go out to the engine just to get me some slack. Okay, done with that. Just gonna take the fuel line here, drop it in a can of gas. Okay. Let's come on over here. See if that fuel pump works. Is that light on? No, let me turn that on. There we go. Oh, there it goes. See the bowl filling? It's tight, right? Yep. Feels like it's filling up the bowl now. It's not returning immediately. Okay, yep. Alright, I'm going to leave you on the tripod here. Move it over here. We'll see if we get some fire out of it. I did turn the throttle down like I like to do, just in case for whatever reason it wants to run fast. Let's give it a start. Wow! Hey, it's charging. Got good oil pressure. Well, now that was a pretty easy start, wasn't it? Now it's running slow now, of course, because I turned the throttle down. Turn that down a little bit, it's charging hard. There we go. Isn't that a nice sounding little generator? I can't tell if that choke is opening or not. I can feel the heating element warming up. So it must be working, and you can hear the engine RPM is slowly increasing. So it sounds like the choke is working. Yeah, as the engine speed increases, the charge rate's going up. 30 pounds of oil pressure. Funny, you can almost see a shadow right there. You see that? Where the needle was for so long. Isn't that funny? Huh, how about that? Let me get a meter and plug it into that receptacle in the back. And we'll see what our voltage and frequency is. Can you see that? 127 volts. You can't see that. About over here. 128 volts. 59.7, 59.8, just about 60 hertz. There it is, 60 hertz. So it definitely would have been running very fast if I didn't back that throttle down. I mean, geez, that's right where it needs to be. Let's plug a light in. I'm excited. Let me get a light. I should also mention we do have coolant in the thing, so don't worry there. Let's see. There's a 300-watt light I just plugged in, and the governor's not quite right. You see, we're down to 55 hertz, 117 volts. That governor needs a little bit of work, but no big deal. It's a first start after all. Give it a break. Jeez, it's the first time it's probably been running who knows how long. These are thermosiphon cooled, so they tend to run a bit hotter than you might expect. I can feel hot air blowing through the radiator up here, cool air down here. But isn't that thing running so nice? How about that? Yeah, that governor. Yeah, I'll have to go through and adjust the sensitivity on that. That seems kind of out of whack. It shouldn't have bogged down so far for only a 300-watt load. Let me take the load off of it. Yeah, something isn't right there. Come on. Yeah. That seems like a governor sensitivity issue. That should just be an adjustment. Alright, well there you go. We did good then. Seems happy. Like I said, just gotta tweak that governor. Well, I think that's about it for tonight. Come back tomorrow to this thing, work on that governor, and put it on the load bank. Make it do some real work. Alright, stay tuned. Well, I think it's about time we finally get this thing under some real load. Got the load bank hooked up, and I've worked on the governor a little bit since last night, or since the previous clip, and I'm still not 100% satisfied with it. It's better than it was, but the responsiveness just isn't what I think it should be. I put a different governor spring in here. Here's the original. I have a feeling it's the spring. This one is not correct, but it's better than this one. Something about the rate of the spring is, I don't know, the metallurgy must change a bit over time. Because the responsiveness is okay, but it's not where it should be. I even have the sensitivity adjustment turned up as sensitive as it will go, as we'll see in a minute. So I got my temp gun here so we can keep an eye on the engine temp. Got the spark plug shields back on. So I think we're ready to start it up. Starts right up nice. The engine is hot now. We got 25 pounds of oil pressure. It's not that hot, it's only 127 degrees. No problem charging. No-load voltage is a bit high. That's because the no-load frequency is a bit high. I think I'm going to turn that down a bit before we actually get started. He's also a bit of a smoker. That tends to clear up once the thing gets warmed up. So this may be a fairly high hour unit, higher than I was initially thinking. Let me turn that speed down a little bit. Alright, we're about 61.7 hertz now. Again, no low voltage is high. Well, let's put some load on it then. Full load is 17.3 amps. We got 1,000 watts worth of load on it. 8.7 amps, 8.8 amps. So we're already down to 60 hertz. Exhaust smoke clears up a little bit once it warms up. No leaks around the fuel pump though, that's good. Leaking around this bolt here. Got to replace that sealing washer. Hey, it's a nice sounding unit. Go ahead and give her full load. Almost there, 15.7 amps. Yeah, she really fell hard there. 58, that's the bottom of the range there. And I know it's not for lack of engine power, because I can manually open the throttle with my hand. Bring it right up to 60 and beyond. So yeah, definitely still have some lingering governor issues there. Let's get a bit more load on it. I'm going to drop all these out and just whack 2,000 watts on it. Almost there. There you go. There's full load. Really falling hard. Let's see what the engine temperature is getting up to. Climbing up pretty quick. Remember, like I said, this unit is thermosiphon cooled, so it relies on the natural convection of the water being heated in the cylinder, or around the cylinders, rising up through this pipe into the radiator, and then being cooled and falling down through the radiator before it's drawn back in to the block. So, by their nature, these types of engines tend to run a bit hot. See a bit of blue haze there. We're definitely burning a little bit of oil. Again, that drop in speed is a governor issue. If I pull on the throttle here, I can bring it right up where I want it. Well, I'm going to let it run under a good load for a little while. Maybe break those rings back in. Remember, we didn't pull the pistons on this unit, so could have a couple stuck ring grooves. We're definitely blowing a little bit of carbon out of the exhaust. You can see it on the table here. Probably haven't seen a good load in a while. Alright, we'll come back in a few minutes. Alright, well, we've been at 100% load for about 30 minutes now. Frequency's still low. .4 amps. Oil pressure's still good. Let's take a look at the engine temp. .196 coming out of the block. About 115 coming out of the radiator. That's a very good drop in temperature from the top to the bottom. This core must be in good shape. I'm going to cycle the load on and off a few times. I'm going to bring the wheel the load bank over here a bit closer. You watch the operation of that governor. Oh, the sun got in your face there. So that's no load. That's full load. You see, we're nowhere near wide open throttle. For some reason, that governor's just not bringing it back to its set point. Well, let's drop the load off of it, and we'll let it cool down. I still like the generator, don't get me wrong. Even if it has governor issues, they can be solved. Well, if you guys like this video and you want to see a follow-up on that governor, maybe I'll actually film that. I'm curious to see if we have any kind of internal issues or if it's that spring. I'll have to go to the hardware store and find a couple different springs, try them out, see if I get any improvement. Well, that's about a wrap for now. So thanks for watching.